Okay, this is Baoku Lee, and I will be interviewing Mr. Lee, who teaches 8th grade. Mr. Lee, what is your perspective on the purpose of education?
So I think education is supposed to make sure our students are well rounded in the many subjects after they leave high school, and that way they'll be more likely to uh, be employed and to help them further in their careers.
Right. So, what's your understanding of play?
So play, I think there's many definitions of play, but generally play means to have fun, to do something that you enjoy.
Right. So, how many minutes do children play per day or per week in your class?
In my class, uh, I'm not sure if I had an estimate, but I would say perhaps around maybe an hour and to an hour and a half.
Okay. And what kind of play do children usually have in your class?
So in my class, they usually have some kind of activity that's kind of fun, and it's hands on. So sometimes we use our senses to draw visuals or to observe the environment and to feel how the sun is like, how the weather is like, and we also create stuff using household materials.
Right. What do you think about the relationship between play and standardized academic learning?
So I think since play really means for somebody to do something they enjoy, I think in terms of that, it can be sometimes difficult because usually standardized uh, assessments are not quite enjoyable for some students. So I think there can be a relationship because there are some lessons that you can plan that might be enjoyable to some students, but some students might also not find that enjoyable, so it might not be play for them.
Mm. Have you ever experienced any conflicts between play and standardized academic learning? If so, do you have any examples?
Yes, so for example, usually standardized testing are all about, they usually try to standardize the assessments, and so one quick way to do that is to have like usually like a multiple choice question, and that usually doesn't quite show how much students can learn, but not all students also like just those multiple choice questions, and so that's not only one way to gauge how students learn, and that's not enjoyable to them.
Right. What do you think about the Common Core standards, and have you been using it?
Yeah, so I think Common Core standards it's good in the sense that it kind of guides us on where we should be at in terms of teaching students. But one of the difficulties of that is that some students may be uh, they may be taught a little bit differently, and so we might not be all in the same area. But in other places, they might be on standard.
Right. So, how do you connect play with Common Core standards in your teaching?
I try to teach some lesson that is a bit more active, where students can get up and get around, and also get outside of the normal like classroom environment. That way, they can be a little bit more outside.
Oh, okay. And that is because you are teaching science, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Right. So, what is the role of test scores in your teaching? So, for example, how do test scores influence your teaching?
So I think test scores help me gauge where students are at and see if they are learning what they're supposed to learn, and so it allows me to assess students, and also I give them retakes, and so if they don't understand the concept, they can go back and relearn the standard or master the content.
What strategies do you use to modify or accommodate students with diverse learning needs?
So I usually give them multiple opportunities to retake tests. Sometimes I also do different kinds of assessments, like maybe I might do like a project instead. That's more that's out of the regular multiple choice questions.
Okay. What challenges have you had at work?
In terms of challenges, I would say that sometimes it's not all students want to learn. Some of them are just there because they were kind of they're just there. Their parents are kind of making them go, and that's pretty much it. And they're not as motivated, so it could be sometimes difficult to reach those students.
How do you go on about reaching those students? Because I understand that sometimes it is hard to encourage students to learn or to do the work when especially they're not even motivated and they're just there to, um, you know, be there because of their parents or whatnot.
Yeah, I try to engage them. If that doesn't work, then I usually talk to their parents, and usually the parents they're a pretty big help in ensuring that students are at least on task and trying at the very least, and we can show some kind of progress. I give them praise, and so I say, "Hey, good job," whatever. And so I really think that it was hard, but you did it. You know, you showed me, and I kind of tell them that I believe in them, that you can be better than that, and that usually kind of encourages them, makes them do more positive behaviors.
So you praise their work and you praise their
Yes, their
skills that
actions.
they put. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How going back to you using parents as a way to motivate and um, get students to do their work. How do you approach
Mm-hmm.
that? How do you ask or engage relationships with students' parents?
So I usually ask, is this Miss, Joe or Mr. Joe, Steven or whatever, and I usually say, I usually introduce myself, say hi, and then if they confirm, I say, yes, this is Mr. Lee. I'm so and so's science teacher at whatever school, um, and I usually talk about the good things, like usually it's Joseph or whatever. He's on task, and he usually does his work and he gets along well with his classmates, but today I'm having some kind of issue because he was blah 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 blah. And then I kind of tell him, I tried talking with him outside, it's not working. What do you think I can do to help make sure he's on task, or what can we do to make sure he's developing good social skills and whatnot. And so I kind of give them the option to decide on how we should do. Sometimes they might not be sure about what to do, and so they might tell me, that they've tried doing all this method and stuff. And then for me, if that's the case, then I usually say, okay, well, how about if I refer him to one of our coach or our specialist or whoever that can help them develop a plan and some kind of skill, so they can develop their social skills and regulate their emotions.
Right. I like how you mentioned when you're talking to the parents, you first approach their parents by letting them know about like the things that their student or their child have achieved in that way. So it's not really what's it called? Not really letting the child be seen in a light where they're all bad, because every student has their highs and lows, and so you just need some help in the challenges and the motivations.
Mm-hmm.
So, what kind of pressures do you have as a teacher?
So since I've already started teaching, some of the pressure is trying to manage the classroom, and also trying to see what curriculum or how to teach the curriculum. I think since I'm in middle school, the curriculum is actually pretty good, so I don't have to do many modifications because the book we're using is pretty solid. So I don't have to worry too much about that. So it's just challenges. It's just juggling classroom management and grading and choosing just a little bit of what to teach.
Right. For the books that you guys that the school provide you, how would you say that is helpful or not so helpful when it comes to teaching? How do you structure your lesson plans around those?
I think they're pretty helpful. So they usually give us like a broad idea of what to do and how to teach and what subjects to cover. And so I usually try to gauge or try to make the class do some sort of discussion around those, around the subject. And then as a review, sometimes we might use something called text dependent questions, where I give them articles from the book, and they can find the answer straight from the text. And so that kind of helps them help increase their skill in citing evidence and trying to find out where exactly it states in the text.
Have you had any challenges with incorporating play with those type of like lesson plans?
Yeah, sometimes students don't find that as enjoyable. But it's not everything is going to be enjoyable, and so sometimes you just have to pull through. You can try to do small activities here and there that might make it more enjoyable, like changing the environment or doing some kind of activity where at least they can just stand up, and so that helps.
Can you give a specific example of when you did use that play for a lesson plan?
So, for example, there was a lesson where we did on I forgot what exactly it was, but it was somewhere where we played the game telephone, and that demonstrated to students that as messages get relayed, the messages change dramatically from what we thought it was originally, and so that's something students really enjoyed, and especially they liked it when they get to choose their own word at the end,
Right.
which yeah. Mm-hmm.
So allowing students to have that choice in that, so that makes them more motivated as well.
Yes.
I have a few more questions. What's your advice for a new teacher?
So my biggest advice is that sometimes students they misbehave, but you have to be careful with how much you let them get away with, because if you let them get away with something small, eventually it's going to add up, and you're going to be frustrated by their actions. So they do something you don't quite like, I would try to fix that as soon as possible. Otherwise, other students are going to see that you're letting them off the hook by doing this one thing, and they're also going to also do that too. So that's something to be careful of.
Right, I feel like that was one of my struggles as I'm starting to teach. Can you give a specific example of how you didn't allow those small corrections be slip by? How do you what is one specific example of what's one strategy that you used before to make sure that they don't do it again?
So one strategy I tried using was parent contact. That's why I have to go. I usually give them like 2 chances, and then the third chance, is a consequence, and I usually call the parents, because I don't. That's what I try to leverage on. That helps a bit, and usually they stop by then. If they don't, then I talk to them outside first. So I ask them, hey, I saw you're making these noises. How come you're making these noises? What can I do to help you? Because I tell them, when you go out into the workforce or your job, whatever, and you make those noises intentionally, it's not going to look good for you or for your employer, and you're going to lose customers and whatnot. And so it can play a factor on how the image of you, the employee, and the company also look like. And so I try to tie it in somehow in their future careers or social standing or whatever, to make it so it's relevant to them.
Right, so using real world examples.
Tying it in, yes.
Tying in, that's right, okay. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you were a teacher candidate?
I wish I knew that I wasn't able to influence all my students. Like, they are not all going to like me. At first, when I came in, I thought, oh, maybe it was just a teacher that might not be necessarily good. But I've come to realize that, no matter how much you do things, sometimes students just aren't motivated, and it's not because of you. It's because the topic, or because something else that you can't control. And it is what it is. But what we're there for is to help those students develop skills so they can at least survive and thrive when they get out of high school, and so they can socialize and whatnot properly.
Right. How do you go upon that? Because I know that sometimes that can be discouraging. What are some strategies that you are currently using to keep you motivated? Because I know that can be discouraging.
Yeah, I would say you just have to stick through with it, and you're here for the students. That's what matters the most. And so you'll find some students that will really make your day good, and it's really all about growth and about yourself, because teaching really is about you yourself. And so once you've learned what ticks you off and how can you structure things so that it's more manageable, then it gets better. And so that's all really is using leveraging some, like, for example, CV and charts, because that helps you a lot with some classroom behavior, and so it really is like a learning journey. It's you're learning yourself all over again, and you see yourself in a different light, because students will try to push you, but yeah, that's how you can grow.
Going back to classroom, a student motivation and engagement.
Mhm.
How do you create a classroom environment that fosters student motivation and engagement?
Um, so, uh, to foster engagement, um, make sure students get at least one section where they're able to collaborate with other people, with other classmates, because that's what makes things enjoyable, is socializing
Right.
for most students, and then some time for them to do some independent practice so they learn the concepts. Um, and so also making sure I remember everybody's names, because that's the most important thing. So if you remember their name, you greet them by their name, and they come in, give them fist bump or whatever, that really helps you along the way, and making sure the students feel like they're welcome. Because if you don't even know their name, then they're not going to respect you, and they're not going to know you, and they're not going to feel welcome. So that's a very bare minimum you can do, is to greet them by their name as they come in, and give them a fist bump or whatever it is that they prefer.
Right, building that relationship, even if it's just a simple like knowing their name.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you so much for interviewing with me, Mr. Lee.
Yep, my pleasure.